You walked to the bathroom this morning without thinking about it once, and somewhere in that walk, your bones got a tiny electrical signal telling them whether to get stronger or start quietly dissolving. Not your muscles, not your mood, your actual skeleton, deciding something about itself in real time based on a walk you don't even remember taking. Here's the thing. A 2019 study out of the American Heart Association tracking cardiac response to low-intensity movement found that stroke volume, the amount of blood your heart pushes per beat, starts adjusting within 90 seconds of standing and walking. 90 seconds. Your body doesn't wait for you to decide the walk counts. It starts responding immediately. The problem is, most of us stop before that response ever becomes anything meaningful. And look, this isn't some abstract fact about the body in general. This is about your heart, your veins, your specific joints, right now, today. So let's actually go through what's happening in there, one system at a time, and why yours might be firing on almost nothing. The first thing your body does is the fastest and the one you'd never notice. Your heart recalibrates its output in real time. Within the first few minutes of walking, your heart rate climbs and your stroke volume increases together, which physiologists call the early cardiac response window. Think about it. Your heart isn't just beating faster. It's beating smarter, pushing more blood per contraction to meet the sudden demand from your leg muscles. And here's what's interesting. This window doesn't stabilize into anything useful until somewhere around the 8 to 10 minute mark for most adults. Which means if your walk is 3 minutes to the mailbox and back, your heart barely gets the memo before you're already sitting back down. Your only job here is duration, not speed, not intensity. Just enough time for that cardiac shift to settle into something your cardiovascular system actually logs as a signal worth adapting to. Ever wonder why the first 5 minutes of a walk sometimes feel like nothing at all? And then, somewhere around minute 8, something shifts. Your breathing evens out, your legs stop feeling like they're waking up. That's not in your head. That's the window closing on the adjustment period and your body finally settling into the actual work. The second thing is happening in your legs, and it's almost mechanical in how simple it is. Every time your calf muscle contracts during a step, it squeezes the veins running through it and pushes blood upward against gravity, back toward your heart. Researchers call this the skeletal muscle pump, and it's doing a huge share of the circulatory work your heart would otherwise have to manage alone. Here's the thing though, a slow, shuffling pace barely engages it. The pump needs a real contraction relaxation cycle, which means a stroll so gentle it barely bends your ankle is leaving that pump mostly idle. This is why a brisk enough pace to feel your calves working leaves you feeling lighter, less swollen, less heavy in the legs by evening, and why a lazy pace can leave you feeling exactly the same as if you'd sat all day. People who spend hours on their feet but barely moving, standing at a counter, shuffling around a kitchen, often report more leg swelling than people who sat for the same stretch and then took one real, contraction-heavy walk. That's the muscle pump talking. Standing still is not the same signal as walking, even when your body is technically upright the whole time. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the third thing is invisible even to you. When your leg muscles contract repeatedly, they pull glucose transporters, called GLUT4, to the surface of the muscle cell, completely independent of insulin. Exercise physiology research on this pathway is honestly one of the more underrated findings in metabolic health, because it means walking can lower blood sugar through a door that has nothing to do with how your pancreas is functioning that day. But, and this matters, that transporter activity only ramps up meaningfully above a certain intensity and past a certain duration. A gentle 10-minute wander barely opens the door. A brisk 20 to 30-minute walk, especially after a meal, opens it wide. So, if you've been walking after dinner, hoping to blunt a glucose spike and not seeing much change, this is exactly why. The dose wasn't quite enough to matter, and I know that sounds too simple to matter. It isn't. This single pathway is part of why exercise physiologists keep circling back to post-meal movement as one of the more quietly powerful, almost boring tools in metabolic health. Not a supplement, not a trick, just muscle, contracting, pulling sugar out of your blood on its own terms. The fourth thing is the one almost nobody talks about, and it's your lymphatic system. Unlike your blood, which has the heart as a dedicated pump, your lymphatic system has no engine of its own. You are its engine. Every muscle contraction from walking helps push lymph fluid through its one-way valve network, clearing waste and supporting immune function along the way. And here's the catch. Short, static-paced walking barely moves it. The lymphatic system responds to variation and rhythm more than raw speed, which is part of why a walk with some incline, some pace changes, some real movement through your whole body tends to leave people feeling less puffy and more clear-headed than a flat, monotonous shuffle ever does. The fifth thing is the one you've actually felt, even if you never had a name for it. The loosening feeling in your knees and hips a few minutes into a walk. That's your synovial fluid, the natural lubricant inside your joints, circulating more freely as you move. Cartilage doesn't have its own blood supply, so it depends almost entirely on movement to draw in nutrients and clear out waste, which is part of why sedentary joints stiffen and why warming up a joint is a real physiological event, not just a feeling. If you've ever noticed your first few hundred steps of the day feel stiffer than the ones 20 minutes later, that's not your imagination. That's your cartilage quite literally waiting for enough movement to start working properly. If you're starting to realize your walks might be part of the problem, not because you're doing something wrong, but because the dose has quietly been too small this whole time, stay, because the next few are the ones that actually explain the zero results part. This is where it stops being about feeling and starts being about adaptation. The sixth thing is mitochondrial biogenesis, and this is where a single walk stops being the whole story. Repeated bouts of walking signal your muscle cells to actually build more mitochondria, the structures that generate cellular energy, which is one of the core adaptations behind improved endurance and metabolic efficiency. But here's the honest part. This doesn't happen from one walk. It happens from the accumulation of consistent signals over weeks. Your body isn't ignoring a single Tuesday walk. It's just waiting to see if Tuesday's walk was a pattern or a fluke before it invests energy in building something new. Consistency isn't a self-help cliche here. It's the literal biological threshold for this specific adaptation. The seventh thing happens in your brain, and it's probably the one you've felt the most without understanding why. Walking, especially at a pace that raises your heart rate even modestly, triggers a release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, along with increased blood flow to the hippocampus. Neuroscience research into BDNF has connected it to improved mood, sharper memory consolidation, and that specific kind of mental clarity people describe after a walk they didn't expect to clear their head. And here's what's fascinating. A 5-minute stroll barely registers on this system. The research suggesting meaningful BDNF elevation tends to involve walks in the 20 to 30-minute range, sustained at a pace that actually elevates your heart rate a bit, which explains why the quick walk to your car rarely gives you that "so that's why I feel different" clarity. But the actual half-hour walk almost always does. And this connects directly to that mitochondrial point from a minute ago. Both are adaptations that need real-time underload to show up, not a token gesture toward movement. The eighth thing is happening quietly in your gut. Walking stimulates peristalsis, the wave-like muscle contractions that move food through your digestive tract through both mechanical movement and a mild autonomic nervous system shift. This is the actual mechanism behind the post-meal walk effect people talk about, and it's real, not folklore. But timing matters more than people think. A walk immediately after eating supports digestion and that GLUT4 glucose pathway we talked about a minute ago working together. A walk 2 hours later on an empty digestive system is a completely different signal to your body, useful in its own way, but not the same one. The ninth thing is the shift in your nervous system itself, your body moving from sympathetic, fight or flight dominance into parasympathetic, rest and digest dominance. Walking, especially outdoors, and at a natural, unforced pace, tends to lower circulating cortisol and shift this balance in a way that's been measured across cardiovascular and stress physiology research for decades. But here's the honest limit. A rushed walk, checking your phone every 30 seconds, cutting through traffic and stress the entire time, can blunt this shift almost entirely. Your nervous system doesn't just need the steps, it needs the walk to actually feel like a walk. And the 10th thing is the slowest, quietest one of all, your bones. Osteoblasts, the cells responsible for building new bone tissue, respond directly to mechanical loading and impact over time. This is why walking, unlike swimming or cycling, has a genuine, measurable relationship with bone density, but only when there's enough load involved. Pace, surface, and duration all determine whether that signal is strong enough to matter. A slow walk on a soft treadmill belt is a much smaller signal to your skeleton than a brisker walk outdoors on a real surface. Your bones are quietly listening for a reason to get stronger, and a big share of the time, they're just not hearing enough of one. This is also the slowest of all 10 things to show any measurable change. We're talking months, not weeks, which is exactly why it's the easiest one to give up on before it ever had a chance to work. So here's the thing that ties all 10 of these together. Your body was never ignoring your walks. Every single one of these systems, from your heart in the first 90 seconds to your bones over months, was responding exactly to the dose you gave it, not more, not less. The mailbox walk and the 30-minute walk trigger some of the same systems and completely different amounts of others. And that difference is the entire story behind why some people walk for months and feel nothing change, while others build real measurable results from what looks, on the outside, like the exact same habit. Your body already knows how to do every single one of these 10 things. It's just been waiting for a signal loud enough, long enough, and consistent enough to bother responding to. Not a harder walk, not a longer one necessarily, just one that actually crosses the threshold each of these 10 systems is quietly, patiently waiting on. I'd genuinely love to know, how many minutes are you walking most days? And which of these 10 actually surprised you? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And if this changed how you think about something you do every single day without noticing, that's exactly what this channel is for. So subscribe, because there's a lot more of your own biology you haven't met yet.